Dave Brown right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Solie, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon, along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories heading into the holidays, and I can't think of a better way to kick off that holiday spirit than talk a little more Angelo Poffo, Randy Savage, Lanny Poffo, and everyone involved with the old ICW territory. This week, we're going to go back to 1981, and in order to get it going, we got to bring back on the man, Mr. On assignment himself, returning recently from Florida, the Sunshine State. Brother, here he is, the one and only Mr. Steve Crawford. Welcome back, Steve. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and everything in between.
All right. So happy to be back. So glad that you've gone through the other side of the transition you're going through. I know it takes a while. But, yeah, transition has a different meaning these days, doesn't it? Yeah, that life transition thing that you've been going through.
Yeah, lots going on, but it's great to be able to come out on the other side, like you said, and get back into the fun stuff. And I was just telling the people out here, I said, what better way to head into the holidays? What better way to say Merry Christmas to all than more ICW wrestling action here?
Absolutely. Just lots of crazy stuff to talk about today. Of course, it's ICW, so there's always crazy stuff to talk about. But let's begin with we got some negative feedback on our last show. Can you believe it?
Yikes,
negative feedback
from a wrestling fan? Oh, no.
From a wrestling fan. Mr. Eric Westland was not happy with me. I did not name check him in the last episode. I did not cite him in the last episode. And I certainly mentioned him in the first episode as one of the historical reference points. And for Eric, nothing but respect for you. Nobody's done more to preserve ICW history than Eric Westland. Probably wouldn't be able to do this podcast at all without all the stuff that he has done. So don't want to make him feel disrespected in any way. He also corrected me on the director's cut of the ICW show. If you see that clip online, it says it's from 1979, and I reference 1979. It's actually 1980. Okay. So I appreciate that correction from Eric. But Eric, if you're out there, hey, nothing but love for me, brother. So
well, and I want just real quickly, I want to touch on that in regards to Eric Westland and even Joe Stassi. I don't know if I butchered his last name there, but those guys have done a world to get a lot of the ICW information out there and a lot of posts on Facebook. I encourage everybody to go check out all of their stuff there in regards to the history of ICW wrestling. Now, before I brought you on, Steve, to do the ICW, I did put some feelers out there for both of those gentlemen or anyone else that considers themselves an ICW historian to please contribute. So we continue to ask everyone to contribute your stories, your information, whatever you can. And again, we've said this from the beginning. We said this back when we were doing the 77 Tennessee split. If we have any errors, if there's any omissions, anything you want to add, please reach out and let us know. We'll be happy to correct it or add it or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. Yeah, those guys and Joe Clark, who's currently running the ICW historical web page, which I think Eric Westland had started many years ago. Just invaluable resources. So I thank all those guys. Want to go back to our first episode where we talked about the Freebirds showing up for an ICW card and Robert Gibson and Mexican Angel and the great Bo James, who everybody who is a wrestling historian probably knows Bo James. He had some really interesting comments about this card. It was from April 13th of 1979. He said, "This is a very early Poffo card using Don Pruitt's Kentucky license. Pruitt sometimes would work with Nick, sometimes would fight with Nick. Nick would let him use his talent. Pruitt had been promoting for Roy in Kentucky all the way back to in the beginning. He was the first to break off and an outlaw. He was promoting under the National Alliance, but when he broke away, he changed it to National Wrestling All-Stars. At one point, he had a little territory in Kentucky that Dick Byers and Cowboy Bob Kelly started in. Wow. Nick would book guys out to Pruitt at times. I don't think anybody realized just yet what the Poffos were up to. Nick would say you can have them, the talent, on this day, but have to pay them so much. Then you have to pay 10% to the office for a booking fee. So Nick is making money without spending one dime.
And Nick being Nick Goulas for anybody.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that is interesting because we talked about the very first year of ICW. There were a lot of names from the Nick Goulas territory, which was still alive in '79, that would pop up on these Poffo cards. And so it sounds like that was the arrangement that they would, have to guarantee X amount of money and then pay a booking fee to Nick Goulas to do that.
Well, a little help from Bo James figuring that one out, or as I thought, it sounded like the first time you mentioned Bo on here, you called him Bro James. I said, what a new gimmick that would be. He can reinvent himself, Bro James.
Oh, that would be a great wrestling name, wouldn't it? Yeah, Bo the Bro James. That would be great.
Very good.
Thought, it'd be fun to talk about Randy Savage a little bit as we start the program, because, he was the face of ICW, and he's still so iconic today that it just, you see people today wearing Randy Savage T-shirts, people, dressed up in his costumes at wrestling events, and I think even Jesse Ventura just this past week talked about he grew a beard and used it on Saturday Night's Main Event as a tribute to Randy Savage. Oh. So we, just want to talk about him individually a little bit. Of course, he had that unique interview style that everybody loves to imitate. And actually, there's a bit in the book about Randy Savage, and I'll mention the author a little bit later. And Landy says he actually kind of coached him on the interviews, that Randy wasn't a very good interview at first. And Landy said, okay, whose interviews do you like? And it was a combination of King Curtis Iaukea and Pampiro Firpo.
Oh, yeah.
And that's definitely where he got the it was Pampiro Firpo. So that's how he kind of developed that interview style that was already in place when he got to ICW. He'd already started kind of working that gimmick. But I think one of the things that when I watch Randy's matches, I don't think I've ever seen anybody that moved like him in the ring. Just the way he would like jump through the middle ropes when he entered the ring in a tag or something, or the way he just held his arms out so high on the top rope. He wasn't this huge man, but he had this ability to make himself look larger than life. Just his body language in the ring was so unique.
I was reading your notes here, and you referred to him as an uncaged lion, the way he kind of moved about, and I could see that. And when you said he wasn't the biggest man, you think about some of those scary cats, like a mountain lion. There's not the biggest cat, but I wouldn't want to, be out there in the woods with one of those either. So he's a dangerous, scary dude, and no doubt about it.
He was. Everything was just done with maximum impact. One of my other phrases was a human time bomb. He just looked like this thing that was just going to explode on you at any second. And then you were going to have this big mess to clean up afterwards, but you had to watch it because you had to see what was going to happen, right?
I don't know if anybody's ever recreated that intensity, or if they could.
No, I like this. He was just kind of one of a kind in the way he moved in the ring and the way he presented himself. And the other thing, it's kind of sad, but the other thing that kind of makes somebody iconic is exiting at the right time. He's not alive today on Twitter embarrassing himself, right?
Right.
So we all have very positive memories of Randy Savage because he didn't live long enough to disgrace himself in ways that some of the other wrestlers from that time frame may have.
Woo, you ain't kidding.
Without mentioning any names. So here's a number of quotes about Randy. Rip Rogers, Randy had to have a contest with everything, and I'm such an idiot. I'm such a mark. I would try to beat him, and sometimes I would. That's the worst thing in the world that could happen. Instead of putting him over and saying, oh, you're the best, I could always beat him in the 40-yard dash, and he'd get mad and tackle me. One time I passed him and turned around and ran backwards through the finish line. Oh, my God. He was ready to kill me.
Wow. Can only imagine.
Some other quotes from Rip. Randy and I did nothing but wrestle every night, train like a bastard, and chase girls. Every night was an adventure. And Randy treated every show in ICW like it was WrestleMania. He just busted his balls. Announcer Tim Tyler There was aluminum foil over every window in Randy's house. I asked him about the aluminum foil, and he said, "I want my neighbors to think that I'm crazy." I don't think you'd have to work too hard to get to that. I think he could have got there without the aluminum foil, but that probably helped. Tim Tyler again. Randy said to me point blank, "I will be in Madison Square Garden someday."
That's inevitable, it would seem.
Yeah, Izzy Slapowitz. Randy's gimmick is who he was. His ring persona was just a cartoon of his real persona. It was just emphasized more. Wow. George Weingroff, I had several one-hour Broadways with Savage. You didn't even have to think, mentioning how easy it was to work with Savage in the ring. Bob Orton Jr., Randy was the loner, paranoid.
Paranoid daddy.
We've kind of heard that aspect of his personality.
Yeah.
I love this. Bob Roop quote, "Angelo and Randy were like Siamese twins of paranoia and mistrust and suspicion."
Well, that is more Randy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Here's another one from Roop. If Randy stepped on $1,000 bill, he would pick it up, then look around and see who was going to jump on him.
Wow. Oh, Randy.
Oh, and here, Rip tells the story of Randy throwing a brick through Jerry Lawler's window here. Good grief. Me and Randy were working a spot show near Nashville. Randy was driving. Rick isn't paying any attention where they're going. Randy gets out of the car and it's getting near dark. He's gone for about 2 minutes. He comes in and says, "Okay, let's go now." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I just threw a brick through Lawler's window." There was a little bit of heat between Randy and Lawler. Why? I don't know. Then we did promos next week. Savage was talking about, "Yeah, I threw a brick through Lawler's window. Do something about it if you can."
Wow.
So in other words, another day in the life of Macho Man Randy Savage.
Is that a wise thing to do? You try to get away with doing, and then you go right there on public television and you announce that I'm the guy that threw the brick through the house of Jerry Lawler, the beloved king. Well, hated king, I guess, during certain times.
Yeah, I'm the one that destroyed your personal property.
Yeah, no kidding. You think on his first paycheck with the CWA that Lawler took the money out for that window back?
Yeah. Yeah, pain and suffering.
Uh-huh.
Well, he did do jobs all around the territory the first week, which some people look back on that and go, was that really the right way to do business? But Lawler was going to get his revenge up front, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Tyler talking about Randy. Sometimes on Tuesday mornings, they would come in and shoot all the promos that they would use in various other markets. Randy would tell the wrestlers what angles hadn't aired yet in what markets. Randy was very soft-spoken off camera. He didn't yell or scream. Very well-spoken. Here's the story about Jerry Jarrett talking about the television program and mentioning Memphis wrestling all the time. I was having trouble with Randy Savage running against me in Kentucky. I could not figure out what Randy was doing. He would spend his entire television time knocking Lawler and Dundee rather than promoting his matches. We were sitting in the dressing room, and I believe it was Bill Dundee who said, "Can you explain to me why Randy, and particularly Angelo, who knows the business well, would spend all their interview time knocking us and challenging us? Why are they plugging us instead of their own matches?" I said, "Well, Billy, I don't know. I can't answer that because I don't know how stupid people think." Sputnik Monroe was sitting near us, and he jumped up and said, "Well, by God, I can tell you how stupid people think." We all had a nice laugh. Sputnik realized what he just said and after telling us to go fuck ourselves, left the dressing room. I never did learn how stupid people thought. So I guess that may have been during that time frame when Sputnik was doing some managerial work for Jarrett back in the day. Here's Tim Tyler talking about the famous steak incident where Savage got arrested.
Oh, boy.
He called me one time and said, "I need to tell you about this before I do it. I'm going to Kroger's and steal one steak. I'm going to put it halfway down my pants so they will catch me." I said, "Why are you going to do that?" He said, "It will be in the paper. It will help my image."
That's how stupid people think, I suppose.
I don't know how people thinking that you're so poor you have to steal food helps your image, but
well, at least he told somebody beforehand, so he can't claim that, I did it on purpose. Sure you did, Randy. No, really, ask Tim Tyler, of all people.
Well, Eric Brimbury had some memories of the Poffos walking out with some free food at times as well. Dutch Mantell, every time you saw Randy, I don't care if it was 6 o'clock in the morning, he was Macho Man. You saw him at midnight, he's still Macho Man. He was always in full-blown, wide-open Macho Man mode. I think, really, Randy Poffo morphed into Randy Savage, who then morphed into Macho Man. So he had 3 distinct personalities. Gene Okerlund, he was very creative and spontaneous. He took his profession very seriously. Jim Ross, Savage was a deluxe pain in the ass to deal with.
I've heard him say that, yeah.
Rip Rogers on Living with Savage. We would wake up, go to the gym, do whatever, go to the town. He would be doing booking. He would be smoking dope and drinking or whatever, and we'd be doing that 7 days a week. We loved every minute of it.
Fast and loose is this ICW here.
Yeah, pretty crazy times.
Yeah.
Rip, I looked at him like my big brother. Anything he did, I emulated. I was like Little Junior, like Randy Savage Jr., not as good by any means. So just a lot of different perspectives on Savage, and I think we'll get to it in later episodes, but I mean, Jerry Jarrett actually spoke very highly of his dealings with Savage, whereas Jim Ross always spoke very negatively.
Right.
And I think that's the difference between Savage knowing who was a promoter and knowing who was a front office employee.
Right, yeah.
As I know Wayne Ferris, Honky Tonk Man, would always say, you know, you're wasting your time if you're not dealing directly with Vince because he's making all the decisions. So,
Right.
you know, those old school wrestlers, you know.
They were smart. I mean, literally smart to the business. They knew how things operated, whereas a lot of those guys were coming in later. It's a little different. Yeah, I totally get you. Plus, you know, Randy was there long before. Not that JR hadn't been around the business, but Randy had been to the WWF way longer than Jim Ross. So here this guy walks in. I mean, I can see why Savage had that bond with Vince and whatnot up to that point. So I can see why he wasn't really even paying attention to what JR had to say.
Right. So let's kind of get into 1981, some of the happenings, some of the talent changes early in the year. Buddy Landell and Big Boy Williams left in January of that year. You know, Buddy was just a very young underneath guy, and ICW was only there for a few months. He would very quickly become a major star in wrestling. So it's kind of a shame we didn't get to see more of him in that era of his career. Williams returned in 1982. Kenny Shane, the former J.R. Hart in Memphis, debuts for ICW. Yeah, I remember they had him doing an interview, and it was kind of like he was Jimmy Hart's representative coming into ICW. Nice. You know, they always tried to, you know, work that Memphis angle. He was there for a few months through like April, and then in '84, which was really when ICW was a part-time territory, he's working a lot of the Cape Girardeau shows and the tag teams there. And then Tony Falk starts working for the company around this time and would stay there, you know, pretty much until ICW folded. He stayed there to '84. And here's a story about Randy wanting some of Tony Falk's equipment. So Randy wanted Tony Falk's boots. Tony didn't want to sell them. All of a sudden, he went from 6 bookings to 4 bookings. I'm guessing this is per week. Judy Poffo asked to buy them again, and Tony said no. The next week, he had 3 bookings and then 2 bookings. Finally, I said, Tony, please sell those boots before you have no bookings at all.
Man, when you said Randy wanted Tony Falk's, junk, I was happy to see it was just the boots there. But that's, I like those boots. Yeah, so, well, at least, you know, he did it very professionally, right? He didn't steal them necessarily. He just kind of cut back on his bookings. I'll teach you a lesson.
Tony probably learned a valuable life lesson. He learned another valuable life lesson concerning Ronnie Garvin.
Okay.
Here's a story from Lanny Poffo. I remember Tony Falk was setting up the ring and he had his girlfriend with him. She was a little bit on the heavy side. Ronnie Garvin was wearing an outfit like the Marlboro Man. He had a Stetson hat, blue jeans. He had the boots. He looked good in it, too. He wore it well. I'm guessing he had $500 in the entire outfit. As he's leaving, Tony Falk sings, "Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys." And I thought, oh no, this is going to end badly. You don't rib Ronnie. He took 3 steps, looked at Tony's girlfriend and said, Yeah, I may be a cowboy, but at least I don't fuck cows.
Wow. Oh, my God. Damn. What did the lady do? Jeez. Oh, man. Rugged. That was rugged, Ronnie Garvin.
It's just, going for the heart punch right there.
Man, damn.
Always interesting to me when these guys work for other territories. January 1981, the ICW guys are still showing up in Milwaukee for King Kong Patterson.
Yeah.
They'd already stolen his cage, so I don't know what else they could get from him at that point.
Let's look around and figure it out.
Yeah. Bob Orton was on the card, and the highlight or the main event was King Kong Patterson versus Randy Savage. Have you seen those matches? It wasn't a highlight, but that was the main event.
It was a low light, I'll give it that much. I see you got Wee Willie and Mighty Cupid at a midget boxing match as well on this card. Wow, midget boxing. There you go. They don't do enough of that nowadays.
They do not. We are missing out in life. On Valentine's Day 1981, they were back in the Commonwealth Convention Center in Louisville. So again, this is at Jarretttown. And Norm Dooley, the infamous Norm Dooley of the Star Match rating system.
Star ratings. Thanks a lot, Norm.
Yeah, it's ruined our society and our enjoyment of wrestling for years now. He reported that 250 people were at that show, so they weren't drawing big in Louisville. And this was the show where Bob Roop returned from his quote injury.
I'm glad you quoted that.
Yeah, working conditions are bad when you fake an injury as a wrestler to not show up.
You would rather not get paid to work wrestling when you're a wrestler because you hate and you just hate being where you are so poorly that you feign an injury to where you create your own plaster cast. Unbelievable, Bob. And
Bob.
Oh, what a story.
So the card that night, just to see who was still around, Rick McCord against Doug Vines, Crusher Broomfield against George Weingroff, Leaping Lanny versus Rip Rogers, Bob Orton and Jeff Sword against Garvin and Whatley, and then Savage versus Bob Roop on top. So Savage comes back from his injury angle and works in a main event match. And he may have won that by DQ or something, I'm not sure. Here's a quote from Jim Cornette. They were always running more eastern Kentucky towns than Jarrett ran. They always wanted to get into Memphis, and they did a few times at the Cook Convention Center, but they could never get TV in Memphis that anyone would pay attention to and get a foothold into running that town. They ran Louisville a number of times at the Commonwealth Convention Center and never drew any business because the Gardens were running every Tuesday night. And then he also went on to say, what doomed them in Louisville was that Fox 41 wanted to counter-program against the Jarrett wrestling that was on Wave Channel 3. The Jarrett show was doing monster numbers. So they put it on at 11:30 to 12:30, thinking the wrestling fans would stick with it. Instead, everybody saw 30 minutes of ICW and then changed over to Channel 3. So obviously the Memphis show's a week behind. It's running at 12 o'clock. They said, we'll start at 11:30. People will watch our show and they won't watch the Lawler show and the Jarrett show. And they just turned the channel on after 30 minutes. So. Okay. Rip Rogers would say Eastern Kentucky was a gold mine for us.
Well, you don't hear that sentence very often, Steve. Eastern Kentucky was a gold mine for us, unless you're looking for coal or something along that.
Yeah, exactly. You hear about mining, and it's usually not in a positive way. There was a newspaper report on the February 18th that a furious Randy Savage reported that someone had damaged his tires in Cynthiana, Kentucky. There was also always a downside of being a heel in small town America during that time frame. This cracked me up. I have no memory of this happening, but Greenway, Arkansas is this little bitty just spot in the middle of the road. Maybe 300 people live in that town at most. And ICW ran a show in Greenway, Arkansas. It's like, why? And I have no idea why they would have picked that place.
Like, how did they even know it existed? Somebody drove
right, exactly. Exactly. 7 miles from my hometown, by the way. And the main event was Doug Vines versus Rick McCord. So it didn't sound like they sent the A-team out there. Nope. Kenny Shane versus Tony Falk was also on that show. I never remember that being advertised. I don't remember anybody talking about it. So I'm not sure what they were thinking there. But if I had a time machine, I'd go back and watch that show.
If a show happens in front of nobody, did it actually happen at all? That's the question.
yeah, exactly. I can't imagine them making gas money for a show like that. In March, the Lexington Herald wrote just a huge article about ICW wrestling, about them challenging Jarrett wrestling. It's really well done. The author was a guy named John Wostendeek, and he would later win a Pulitzer Prize while working for the Philadelphia Inquirer. So you've got this like very legitimate newspaper reporter going out there, and it's on the ICW page that Joe Clark runs. Anybody can go out and find these articles. And if you're really interested in ICW, you need read all of it. But they talk about the Savage Waffle House incident, and we'll describe that a little bit more later for anybody that doesn't know that one. Lanny says he could never be a bad guy. Well, that changed. And notes, I'm not a tough guy. And the author wrote about both Savage and Lanny and said they were not your kind of normal wrestlers in the way they presented themselves. Like a wrestler saying, I'm not a tough guy was kind of an atypical statement. They talked about the pay as being $200,000 for a top guy in wrestling and $25,000 for the average wrestler. That may have been a little generous for the average wrestler.
Yeah, especially for the ICW, especially.
Yeah, Savage. I tried to be the best in baseball and didn't make it. I'm going to be the best in wrestling. Yeah, that's a pretty good statement. A lot of the article was about their frustrations about not getting able to be booked into Rupp Arena. Savage, as long as we can't get into Rupp Arena, we're going to look small time, which was true. Tom Minter, the executive director of the Lexington Civic Center, said, ICW is not the type of organization we want to do business with. So that's a very frank statement to put in the public like that.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. At one point, ICW went on TV and said the Rupp Arena officials were taking money under the table to keep them off of out of the arena. And after a few phone calls from attorneys, they retracted that statement later on television.
I'd love to see some of these retraction episodes, man. Remember, we said this. Yeah, we didn't mean it.
Yeah, I wonder who actually said that retract. I'm sure it was one of those milk toast announcers that they made do that. It was funny. There's this complete sidebar on the Wee Willie angle. So I mean, that's how like over the Wee Willie angle where Savage had dropped the elbow on him.
Yes, and the video is out there, guys. You can go look it up. It is out there.
The author concludes, I've concluded Wee Willie's injuries weren't too serious. I think. Nobody had seen Wee Willie after that big elbow. And interesting quotes from Jerry Jarrett. One of the things that was hysterical was they actually went to the ring after Jarrett's matches, got some blood, had it tested to make sure it was blood, and by God, it was blood. Wow. So... Jerry Jarrett, for me to tell you that wrestling is absolutely legitimate is ridiculous. Jarrett went on to say that the wrestler's job was to have an entertaining match, not necessarily a short, decisive one. Jarrett, is there a Santa Claus? My answer is there is, in the hearts and minds of everyone who believes there is. So, Jarrett, semi-exposing the business. But,
sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. So we mentioned the Waffle House incident, which Dutch Mantell has talked about a lot, and then Rip says Rogers, well, I was there and Dutch wasn't, and he talks about it more than I do. So, but anyways, the story goes 1978ish. Savage is main eventing for Nick Goulas in Nashville. After the matches, he goes to Waffle House. He's about to give his order when a local guy walks in. Everybody seems to know this local cowboy. And he's saying, I've just gotten married. And they're all happy and they're paying all this attention to the cowboy. And Savage is sitting there looking at his menu. And he's not the happiest guy in the world that they're not taking his order and they're giving rounds of applause. So he looks up and finally says, who gives a fuck? Which is, probably not the best way to start a conversation.
You can't do that to a Waffle House regular, man. People take those regulars seriously.
and a guy with a cowboy hat on. I mean, you're just asking for it.
That's it. Old Tex.
So the guy gets into Savage's face and says, "Do we have a problem?" Savage responded, "I don't know. Do we?"
Do we?
Yeah. Savage may have been self-medicated that night from some sources.
Sure.
So a physical fight breaks out inside the Waffle House. At one point, Randy jumps on the corner and asks for a knife, and then Rip hands him a butter knife because that's the only knife that he has.
It's a Waffle House. We don't have steak knives. Here's a butter knife. And
So there's some clubs I think that were kind of in the area and you know they see this happening from outside or something and Rogers just gets out of there as fast as he can because this isn't going to end well, and the cowboy gets out of there, but Savage is not really in the mood to just have a nice conversation. So he took a billy club from one of the officers. That didn't make them happy. So they brought in a German Shepherd. And Savage kicked the German Shepherd, which did not make the dog happy.
Oh, man.
And here's what Dutch Mantell would later say about what happened. The dog bite had to be at least 9 inches long, and I could see the puncture wounds where the dog's teeth dug in. So the dog literally ripped Savage's ass apart.
Oh, man. And
you know that figure to...
Yeah, well, he probably didn't feel a damn thing either, whatever he was on here. This is a hell of a story. It's not necessarily levels of Mr. Saito and Kimpatera or things like that as far as the action involved with the officers, but yeah, it's still Randy Savage going nuts, taking a nightstick, fending off a dog, well, trying to fend off it. That's not going to happen. German Shepherd on his arm. I can picture it now standing on one of the Waffle House tables with a butter knife. By the way, Rip Rogers saved the career of the Macho Man. He only handed him a butter knife. Imagine if he had a steak knife. Savage may have been sent to prison. We may have never gotten the Macho Man in the WWF.
That's true. That's true. Luckily, wrestling promotions always made friends with the local police. Of course, Sal Weingroff had some pull. He was working for the police after he retired as a manager. Savage ended up paying a small fine and being placed on probation. Some other Northeast Arkansas spot shows that they ran, I guess, off the Memphis TV. April of 1981, they were in Blytheville, Arkansas, which was kind of a monthly town for Jarrett at that point. And Bob Orton Jr. versus Weingroff in the main event. What's most interesting is the local newspaper got a quote from Lawler about ICW at this time. It says, ICW, a wrestling alliance featured by Memphis UHF station WPTY, has been trying to provoke matches with the Jarrett Company for some time. Who cares, says Jerry Lawler. I mean, who watches them? You can't even pick up their stupid station.
Wow. Just ripping the station.
ICW's I picked up their station in Rector, Arkansas, so it was being ICW is scheduled to air in Memphis an hour before Channel 5's program. Lawler, if we were going to mention their challenges on the air or especially take them on, it would only give them exposure. I don't have too much trouble ignoring them. And then the next night, there's an advertisement in the paper in Manila, Arkansas, with no wrestlers mentioned whatsoever.
Wow.
It says men, women, midgets. So that's the attraction. You're going to see men, women, and midgets.
All in the same match.
Yeah, who knows? April 25th in Lexington, Izzy Slapowitz and the Devils duo beat Lanny Poffo and Weingroff for the U.S. Tag Team titles. This was really one of my favorite Izzy Slapowitz moments where they're showing the tape. He throws a fireball at one point and he goes, "Oh, there's a bad spot on the tape." And they said, "Oh," somebody says, "Oh, you threw fire." And Izzy goes, "A normal man can't throw fire. Who do you think I am? The devil?" And he's just smiling like so evilly. Great Izzy Slapowitz moments.
Yeah.
Some of the other things that Izzy did during his time with ICW was he gave Ronnie Garvin a shot with a hypodermic needle, and Garvin started foaming at the mouth. That was one of his. And then at one point, he showed a picture admiring his cousin, the Ayatollah Khomeini.
Oh my gosh, this guy was built for the Bill Watts territory, man.
He was.
He would not have made it out alive, but he could have been there.
Yeah. So the whole concept of Izzy Slapowitz came from Frankie Kane, the Great Mephisto.
Okay.
When he was booking for the Culkins in Mississippi, he brought in Izzy. And he told him, the gimmick is you own these pawn shops in New York City. You're this wealthy pawn shop owners. So Izzy cuts the promos for local TV, and they think that he's saying porn shops, and they're not happy with the porn shop owner.
Sure.
so that part of the gimmick had to be dropped. All right. Another interesting thing in the world of wrestling. In May of 1983, you've got Garvin Root, Bob Orton, and Pez Jr. at the International Wrestling Show in the Omni, headlined by Thunderbolt Patterson and the Sheik.
Yeah.
And so this is the Outlaw promotion that you've got going on with Jim Wilson and Thunderbolt Patterson.
That's right. Me and Jamie Ward did a whole episode on that International Wrestling League. Absolutely. Yep. I remember this.
Yeah. And so it's interesting they bring in, these ICW guys to kind of fill out their card there. What did you hear the attendance was on that show? I think I read 14. There's all these different numbers that float around.
It's been quite a while. It wasn't a lot. I mean, it was more than I would have guessed, because I would have guessed in the hundreds, and I think they actually cracked 4 figures anyway. But, I know Thunderbolt and Jim Wilson had stated they had closed the doors after a half an hour. The state did, whoever. There was all sorts of claims and things made in those books and whatnot.
Yeah. I think the number I read was 1,400, which was still pretty surprising.
Well, you can go back and there's a little bit of it on YouTube. Their television program that lasted all of a month or whatever. You can see by that there were more people there than should have been there, with the whole Big Red selling the program, etc. And I apologize, Jamie, and every Big Red fan out there, but that's just not going to bring me down to the Omni. No, sir, brother.
And you imagine, how hot Georgia Championship Wrestling was in 1981, and you're trying to run the Omni against them? Yeah, that's wild.
That's peak. That's JYD, DiBiase, Tommy Rich had just come back. You got the Freebirds. Unbelievable. Yeah.
And then actually Thunderbolt and Wilson both sent interviews during that time saying they were coming into ICW. A year later, Thunderbolt would come in. Wilson never came in, as far as I know. But just a very one of those strange slices of wrestling history that ICW gets to be a part of.
Yeah.
Just May 31st, they're in Paducah, Kentucky. I just wanted to kind of read the card. Here's kind of the programs and the people involved at this time. There's a guy named Bob Stabler who's wrestling the Destroyer.
Probably not Dick Beyer.
Probably not Dick Beyer. Pez Whatley takes on, quote, the Spider, which Savage had worked as the Spider earlier in his career. Crusher Broomfield's in a handicap match against Bill Martin and Ricky Cook. And the main event was Bob Orton versus Bob Roop for the TV title. It's the old gimmick where the TV title is at stake for 30 minutes, and so the challenger probably wins in 31 minutes, right? That old gimmick. So Crusher Broomfield was brought in as a heel. He was kind of the, dumb country hick sort of giant. Savage is manipulating him. He's got a sick sister, and Savage is giving him a contract, and he has to be beholden to Savage because he needs this money for his family, sort of thing.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell back to talk to you about all the new and exciting audio and video podcasts we've been putting together over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. As a self-funded brand, this entire ship is powered by our patrons. It's your support that keeps all of these wonderful shows going here at WrestleCopia. And with that said, I wanted to mention that we now have 3 major tiers with tons of Patreon-exclusive next-level content for our Patreon supporters. And it all starts with the $5 all-access tier, which gets you early access to many of the weekly podcasts, at least a dozen monthly digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure, the insanely detailed show notes for the Wrestling Memory Grenade Regional Rasslin, and the OG Monday Warfare podcast, plus random bonus video drops, archived old-school audio watch-alongs from the early years of the brand. And if that's not all, the brand new Patreon-exclusive podcast, Ranting Raw, featuring yours truly, Ray Russell, completely uncensored, unfiltered, with honest takes, taking patron questions and addressing various topics from throughout wrestling history. It is a whole lot of fun wrapped under the all-access tier for only $5, but things get even hotter with the VIP Superfan tier. For just a few dollars more, you get everything already mentioned in the all-access tier, plus as part of the VIP tier, a whole new slew of videocast series where it's not just your typical watch-alongs. Sure, we laugh, we have fun, but we're also breaking down the history, the context, and the why behind what you're seeing. And as part of the VIP tier, you have access to Dan Gennety's Puro Resu Academy videocast, the Coliseum videocast with co-host Gene Jackson, and the Monday Warfare videocast, Raw vs. Nitro, breaking down the history of the Monday Night War. Plus, you also get the Memphis 1985 folder of goodies and all show notes for the Puro Academy podcast and Gene's retro review show. Lots to be had there at the VIP tier. But wait, there's more. For those WrestleCopia backers who crave even more from the brand, we bring you yet another level of content fit for a warrior, because it is indeed the ultimate tier, which gives you everything from the all-access pass, everything from the VIP tier, plus you will receive access to the big ones video series featuring a lengthy look and discussion into some of the biggest pay-per-views, super shows, and other events from throughout wrestling history. It's also a great place to keep up with the big events that coincide with the Monday Warfare videocast and so many other big events from years gone by. You'll also have access to the newest big hit to the Copia brand. I'm talking about Regional Rasslin Unreal, the video series. Get ready for the next level in Regional Rasslin as we dissect territory history in video form. Watch along with us. But still, even more for your money, guys. You'll also receive access to the Treasure Chest, which offers patrons the unique opportunity to download and watch select rarities from wrestling history. And for those of you who are wondering what we offer, are contemplating joining a paid Patreon membership, or simply a curious lurker, a reminder there's a free tier at our Patreon that you can join as well. Remember, guys, no subscription, cancel any time, but I think you'll like the content that we're offering there for any budget you may have. And you can sign up right now, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, or look for the QR code where available. We appreciate your support in helping us pay the bills to keep the WrestleCopia podcast network running and enabling us to continue to bring you all the quality programming that we offer.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia podcast network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia podcast network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Next, we have in June of 1981, one of the most infamous moments in ICW history that's been talked about 100 different ways and 100 different times, the Sugarhold Challenge.
There it is.
So June 3rd, they're in Frankfort, Kentucky, and they're going around the loop with Bob Roop putting marks in a sugar hold. And, of course, if you're a trained professional wrestler, and you can put somebody in a legitimately incapacitating hold, there's probably very little chance that something's going to go wrong, right? So, Bob Roop, to me, it had no real place in pro wrestling. I told Angelo it was a bad idea. That kind of stuff and pro wrestling are two different things. He insisted on doing it. You put on the hold on them to start. Then he starts talking about William Harding. The reason the guy got away because he was small. He was probably 120 pounds. He had narrow shoulders, So when I put my hand behind his neck and over to his other arm, it was loose. There was a lot of free space in there. He was not only small, but he was limber. I couldn't get a secure hold on him. He started wiggling, and I'm trying like hell to hold on to him. It took him about 50 seconds, but I couldn't hold him. He got loose. So this is William Harding, who's gone to the matches with the sole idea of he can escape the sugar hold, and he kind of talks about his process. He's talked about this many times. There's an article on the Pro Wrestling Stories websites with author Benny Scala, Scala. When I got there were 3 or 4 matches before they even got to the challenge. They did it right before intermission, so I didn't watch the other matches. I just kept my head down, focused on what I was going to do. When they finally called us down there were 4 of us. We all had to sign waivers. The first guy was about Roop's height, rather skinny, wearing black jeans and a silky black shirt. He was kind of a smart aleck, so when they laid down and Bob put the sugar hold on him, the ref said go, and the guy was done in 3 seconds. He got down on the mat and put the sugar hold on me. It was one of those moments when time kind of stands still. I could almost see the dust floating in slow motion in front of me as I kept my eyes on the referee, knowing that as soon as he said go, I had to act. I planned to go between the G and the O just to get the first move off before Bob could react. So there I was, locked in the sugar hold. The referee said go, and I went with everything I had. I twisted my body and brought Bob over face first into the mat. Roop didn't flip all the way over, but he moved far enough that I could spread eagle on the mat, getting my right arm just enough to lean into it. I actually had him in an exaggerated arm bar. So basically, William Harding escapes the sugar hold. After about a minute, I heard Roop say, "Damn, this boy's strong." Before I could get my left leg up and swung him around, he was trying to reset the hold. Finally, Roop backs out, gives it up. And William Harding wins, and the crowd's going crazy because he's going to win $1,000. He's won the challenge. And the referee was really smart to the business because he immediately said, "Oh, no, you didn't do it in the time limit," which there was no time limit advertised, right? And Bob Orton goes down the ring, says, "Harding, get your ass out of here." Harding refuses to leave the ring. So here's kind of the negotiations that goes on after Harding wins the challenge. Roop, I was disgusted. I just went to the dressing room. Angelo, you thought he was going to have to give up his family jewels or something. He was so distressed. He was pacing back and forth. He looked like he just got a phone call that his wife and kids had been killed or his house had burned down. He asked Randy, "What do we do? What do we do?" Ronnie Garvin said, "Hey, you've got to pay him. You'll kill your town if you don't honor that kind of pledge." I found out years later, I ended up talking to William Harding. What happened, Angelo kept coming out and trying to talk him down off the payoff. Angelo offered him $100. He was waiting for everyone to leave. He raised his offer to $250. There was a cop that was part of the security of the building. He was keeping an eye on things. The cop spoke to Angelo and said, "If you ever want to come back here, you'd better make good on your promise." So Angelo had to. He was stuck after that. I hated the idea of paying the money. I love the idea of Angelo having to do it. and it was a local sheriff named Sam Harrod who basically stepped in and said, "Angelo, you're paying this kid or you're never coming back." Roop, looking back on it now, I'm glad that it happened. That stuff was always dangerous. So that was almost the end of Roop's time in the territory. Of course, he was very unhappy the whole time he was there.
Yeah, clearly. And he was kind of one of the many guys there, Ronnie Garvin being another one who had some points in there, right? So I don't know that they ever saw much of the money, whatever they were making off these shows. They certainly didn't see any tonight when Angelo had to fork over that grand to Mr. Harding. But, we talked extensively on the Wrestling Stoop. Bob Roop covered this entire story from his end, and we covered Harding's end as well. So I think we did a pretty good job covering it from beginning to end. But it's always fun to go back and look at this and think about, Bob always said you shouldn't put shoots on a worked show, but Angelo loved doing these and you remember the chicken challenge and all these things. He would do that because, even if you didn't have a match, if you knew these guys weren't going to show up, you didn't have to pay anybody to work double. Like Bob wasn't getting paid extra to do these shoot matches with these guys from the crowd. So you had an extra, match on the card without having to pay anybody. And that was Angelo's thought process here.
Right. And you know, this is the old thing. You heard a local, they're going to go tell all their friends that, yeah, that shit's real, you know, that sort of thing.
Well, I tell you what, man, I bet they stopped that night. I bet that was the end of the old Sugarhold challenge. I would have to
that
imagine.
was the end of the Sugarhold challenge. Good for William Harding. He's got a lot of exposure over the last. It's funny because that happened and you didn't hear about it for years, and then you know, people started writing about it online, and then podcasts started popping up, and now he's become somewhat of a wrestling legend for that evening. So good for him.
Amen.
A June 5th card in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. We have a reported online gate for this card, which is interesting because we don't have a lot of gate receipts here.
Yeah.
So reportedly they made a little over $2,000, $2,036, which would be about a little over $7,000 in today's money. Savage versus Garvin on top. They only had like 7 wrestlers on the show, I think. Bob Orton Jr., Chuck Kelly, the Miser, Tony Falk, and Bob Roop. So you know, this year. It was probably the most profitable year for ICW. There's some quotes from Rip later. We'll put that into a little more focus, but it was still fresh enough for these, you know, spot shows in small towns that it hadn't gotten, you know, overdone yet, and they hadn't got tired of seeing the same people every month yet. June 18th, 1981, big match at Henry Clay High School. Somebody's going to lose their belt or lose their hair. Savage versus Garvin, belt versus hair. So either Garvin is the new world champion or he's bald. No disqualification. So what happened in that match? Well, Garvin didn't win the belt and he didn't go bald either.
Oh, man, imagine that. No, now this one you had complete control over, right? This wasn't a work.
Right.
They walked into this knowing the finish.
And they said, oh, Steve Cooper interfered. And even though it was, quote, a no DQ match, I guess there was a clause in the contract that Steve Cooper could not disappear or interfere with the match. Mm-hmm. So that's how they got out of it. But a little false advertisement there in pro wrestling. Can you believe it?
I wonder what the numbers were at the next Henry Clay High School event.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you justify that in real time in the ring. You know, they had that situation years later in Smoky Mountain Wrestling with Ricky Morton and Tammy Fitch, and they were advertising that one of them would lose their hair, and neither of them did. And the crowd, and I think Morton actually lost the match, so the babyface loses on a screw job, and Cornette thinks, well, the crowd's going to accept that. And the crowd did not accept. They wanted to see a ball.
That's right. At the end of the day, that's all the crowd cares about, man. They want to see. You better pay up.
Yeah, you make the promise, you back it up. We talked about Izzy and how entertaining he could be, but this is about the time frame he leaves. In July of 91, this time frame Izzy's talking about, it was a very rare occasion that Angelo paid for security. That came back to bite us. I was attacked in the National Guard Armory. Lanny and George pushed them away and pushed the fans away who were attacking him and said, we'll take care of them. My knee was swollen up like a football. That was the beginning of the end for me in ICW because I called Angelo a cheap son of a bitch for not having security. It went downhill from there. A few weeks later, I left. I've also heard him tell that story, and Angelo said, you can't talk to me like that. And as he said, I just did. But, you know, basically, as he said, you know, the whole time you're working for ICW, you're just hoping to get a call from somebody else because the pay and the working environment's so terrible. And then Roop kind of talks about this situation a little bit. We ended up buying 10% of the territory. In order to pay for it, we had a weekly guarantee of $200. I ended up living with Jeff Sword and Doug Vines. They were good guys. I slept on the couch or something. After Izzy blew up at Angelo, I looked out the window one day, and Randy had been watching the apartment. His car was parked outside the apartment all week. I couldn't believe it. Talk about paranoia. Yeah. So Randy's keeping tabs on the ICW talent and what they're going to do after they've had this big blow up with Angelo.
That may be where Randy first started making those glitter posters while he was sitting there waiting for something to happen. We're going to find something to do here.
Randy Savage, private detective. So
that would have been a great TV show.
Yeah. Oh, so July 1981 is when we have all the significant talent leave the promotion. Bob Roop leaves, goes to Mid-South. Bob Orton goes with him about the same time.
Right.
Izzy Slapowitz leaves about the same time. Doug Vines and Jeff Seward. And then Rick McCord left the territory. So really, Bob Roop and Bob Orton Jr., those are two main event guys.
Well, the story with that, I've heard Bo James tell it this way. I don't know how accurate it is, and that's not a knock on Bo. It's just I know wrestlers tell stories, right? And I don't mean Bo. I mean where he might have gotten it from. But my understanding is it was Ernie Ladd who was coming in and doing random shots for Angelo, who saw Roop there, saw Orton there, and went back to the Cowboy and said, we got to get these guys down here, Bill. And I'm sorry, that was a terrible Ernie Ladd, but he wasn't talking about Bundy, so I wasn't trying very hard. Bundy. So that's the story I've heard told a couple different ways in regards to how Roop and Orton came down was. But you have to wonder, did Bill Watts send Ernie up there? Why was Ernie working random shots? It was like, did Bill say, go up there and see what Angelo's got that we can use down here? I don't know how that played out, but you're right. Roop comes and Orton follows just a couple weeks after.
Yeah, and Garvin had an ongoing relationship with Bill Watts. I think they had a good relationship. And so I don't know. I don't have records of Randy or Ernie Ladd coming this early. He may have.
Okay.
Or I'm not 100% sure. But you lost, like I say, those two main events guys. The Devil's Duo was the top heel team.
Right.
A lot of times they're working semi-main events or main events. So you lose all that talent at one time. And then here's the Roop story that he told you that I just love about getting this payoff check from Angelo. Again, he mentions they were getting the $200 a week. The rest went to our stock that we were purchasing. It was hard times. I was owed about $5,500. I never got a tally of our earnings. Maybe I was owed twice that or 3 times that. I don't know. I knew I was going to have to fight for it. I knew Angelo was going to try to screw me. I drove up there to Lexington and asked Angelo to pay me in cash. He said, okay. Angelo was seriously dangerous about money. I didn't know if I had to fight for it or not. I went up to the door with a box cutter in my pocket and leaned a baseball bat by the door. If I'd had 3 or 4 guys in there waiting for me, I was going to get the baseball bat. Angelo didn't have the cash. He had written a check. I wanted to be done with it so bad. The bank was closed. I had to wait overnight to cash the check. I was so pissed off. I went to the bank in the morning. I presented the check. The manager took it, and the teller said, it'll be a minute. Angelo had left instructions for them to call him when I showed up with the check. The call came into a break room in the studio. Ronnie Garvin happened to be in the room at the time. Angelo got the call. Ronnie Garvin told me about this part, and Angelo says to Randy, should we pay him? Ronnie said, hey, are you telling me our stock is no good? Wow. Ronnie wasn't going anywhere. They had to pay me. So.
Wow. It's things you could do back in the day, though. Like you call the bank, hey, don't cash this check until. What were they going to do anyway? Like, why do you need to check with me first? It's a very peculiar whole situation. But yeah, Bob has said that story on the air, and also he did get paid.
Yeah. Just imagine I got to get my box cutter and my baseball bat because I got to go talk to my boss about getting my check more early.
Right.
Bob Orton Jr. ended up borrowing money from me to leave. I don't know how he lived on $200 a week. He may have been going to Angelo and asking for more money. So when it came time to leave, he didn't have anything coming, but I don't know.
Luckily, Randy Orton was only about a year old at this point, so he doesn't recall living in the ICW world.
Yeah, he wasn't scarred for life. I did have a chat with Rip Rogers one day, and I was talking about, the guys that come from Southeastern and how unhappy they were. And his quote was, yeah, they were used to making money.
I love it.
They were used to actually, having a life.
Right, yeah.
Rip, I asked him a question about ownership of the stock, and he said, originally Garvin, Roop, and Orton Jr. owned 10% of the stock. Garvin bought another 10% when Orton Jr. and Roop left. Rip Rogers and George Weingroff bought another 5% at that time. So, again, a lot of those wrestlers, had, quote, stock in the company. And Rogers has also said, when we were promoting for ICW, the boys made more money than the owners, there were all these expenses that the boys didn't know about. Okay, so we have lost Bob Roop, Bob Orton Jr., the Devil's Duo, Rick McCord, young babyface. Who's coming in to replace those people? July, Apache Lou Martinez.
Apache Lou Martinez, my goodness.
Tio and Tapu and Gary Royal. So not exactly on par with the talent that you lost there.
I think Luis Martinez might have been about 50, and I'm not even joking at this point. I mean,
yeah, and I've seen some of the tapes from that time. I honestly couldn't tell if he was a heel or a babyface the way he was working. It was like, what is this guy?
Well, he was upset that the Sheik went out of business and he had nowhere to work, I think is what happened. Yeah. Oh, Tio and Tapu.
Pez quickly turns heel, becomes one of the top heels of the promotion because of the vacuum that's been created. And then you get the convertible blondes. Rip Rogers and Ricky Starr became the new tag team champions. So Ricky Starr had been working prelims, and he's promoted to a tag team champion at this time.
I saw Ricky Starr work a match in Georgia around this time, and I thought he had an okay look here in ICW, but after watching him try to work in Georgia, I could see why his time with the convertible blondes wasn't exactly the longest of all time.
Yeah. Rip Rogers later said, Angelo's wife Judy came up with the name Convertible Blondes and we should all be together. When you got three guys and you got bleached blonde hair, that makes sense. You're the unit. So Gary Royal was the other member. Ricky started everything wrong. He didn't look good. He wanted to be Ric Flair. Gary Royal was green. He was a good mouthpiece. And then here's a great internet lore about Ricky Starr. He allegedly faked his death and assumed the identity of his dead brother. So he was allegedly legally dead for a while.
Wow, okay.
And when I lived in Iowa, I knew a guy who was legally dead, so that does happen. And at that point in time, you could still make money in cash in a lot of ways, and kind of hide the fact that you weren't paying taxes and
so
you weren't on a real payroll.
If somebody went to murder this guy, could they be convicted? I don't know how that would be very interesting. Yeah. That's a dangerous thing to play with, man.
That's right. That's a hard legal case. You killed a legally dead man.
That's hard times, baby, when you're legally dead but still alive. You know what I'm talking about? In public, if you will.
So on the TV title, Roop had won the TV title from Orton shortly before he left, and then he dropped it to Great Tio on his way out. Tio and Tapu were not partners, which was strange. Tio, I believe, was the heel. Tapu was a babyface. So they had different spots on the card than their normal tag team. Jim Cornette mentioned as the top guys left, it got weaker over time instead of stronger. So here's the July 26th card in Louisville with kind of our new lineup. Ricky Starr versus the Miser. Rip Rogers versus Bill Martin. Tio, the Samoan, is the TV champ versus Tapu. Weingroff versus Pez Whatley. Garvin and Lanny versus Savage and Broomfield. So I think I had it. Tio was the heel TV champ and Tapu was the babyface.
Right, yeah.
Also during this time frame, we had the change in the announcers for the ICW television. So John Back was fired. I don't know specifically what he did. I've heard rumors that he broke kayfabe in some way and that the Poffos were upset with him. And they did some angle where they gave him like an Announcer of the Year award. And then Savage ran him off the set and he was never seen again or something of that nature. So we have new announcers. Tim Tyler, whose real name was Tim Epstein, and Edgar Wallace, who is going to be a very colorful character in our lives as we go forward.
Got all sorts of information on Edgar Wallace.
Yeah. So at the time, the Urban Council cityman Edgar Wallace talked to the Lexington Herald about working as a wrestling announcer. It's good-natured fun and sport. Obviously, they're not trying to kill each other. The pay is not that great, but it's a lot of fun.
Wow.
So supposedly John Back is fired for breaking kayfabe, and then Edgar Wallace, before just as he gets hired, says, "Yeah, this is just fine. They're not trying to hurt each other."
Your Urban County Councilman Edgar Wallace. The pay is not that great, but it's fun, guys. Really, at the end of the day. That's why I'm here. So there you go.
That's why I'm here. Sometimes he'd have the hairpiece, sometimes he wouldn't. Good stuff. Here's Tim Tyler talking to Brian Last. The first time they went to pay me, they said, you need to walk into the parking lot with us. I said, okay. They had parked their car behind the station, and Angelo had a gold colors Mercedes sedan. He popped the trunk, and it looked like the Bank of America in there.
Wow.
The amount of money was staggering that I saw in that trunk. He looked at me and said, the miser knows that money is the most important thing in the world. And I looked at him like, what? He said, we pay all of our guys in cash also. I said, don't you ever worry about somebody doing something to this car? And he said, no, they know whose car this is, and they know what would happen if somebody ever touched it. So,
my goodness.
Words from the miser. So, yeah. That's
crazy, though, to keep all that cash in the trunk of a car. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that have nothing to do with the wrestling world that give a flying shit about what you're going to do to them to go pop that trunk and take that money. I've heard tell of his stash in the house, in the vaults, if you will. But wow, this is a new one for me.
I think that Jerry Lawler has told a story about Tojo Yamamoto, that Tojo did not trust banks, and he carried all of his cash in the back of his car, and then his car burned up, crashed, something. He lost all of his cash at one point in time. Wow. Can you imagine, like,
that's crazy.
Everything you own, different times. It was around this time that Crusher Broomfield turns babyface. In the storyline we talked about earlier, where Savage was paying the hospital bills for his sister, the non-existent sister had actually died, and Savage was still taking Broomfield's money. That's an angle.
Wow, that's a dark angle, man.
That's a dark angle. Hey, your sister's dead, but I'm still paying for her well-being. And so then Garvin wrestled Savage around the horn for Broomfield's contract. In September, there's this entertaining skit they do for the Miss Macho Man contest. And so Miss Macho Man is in a box, and Ronnie Garvin is bringing in this box with Miss Macho Man. Savage is very frustrated and upset because he doesn't understand what's going on. And they pull the box open, and Pez Whatley is hogtied into a chair, and he's wearing Windman's bra and a woman's underpants.
Right. You have a mop for a wig too, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And when this airs, Crusher is still a heel, but he's laughing hysterically because Pez has been humiliated, and Savage is upset with Broomfield because he's laughing at Pez Whatley. But it's so funny that even the heel breaks up over it. So again, Garvin always outsmarts Savage, but never wins the belt.
Man, they got a lot of play out of that fucking box, right? I mean, that box goes back to fucking Knoxville. They carried it with them. The original CB was still spray painted on there from when Crusher Broomfield was the Canadian Bumblebee. Crusher Broomfield. And then now we're doing it again with, or not Crusher Blackwell. And now we're doing it with Broomfield here. And it's so funny. And then, of course, they did use it repeatedly here on TV. They used it with Bob Roop in the past. They're using it with Pez here. I wonder whatever happened. They should have eBayed that box. I wonder what you get for it now.
Somebody should make the box and then just have it, worn down like it's 50 years old and then sell it on eBay.
There you go.
That's it. Yeah, some woodwork maker out there. We got you an idea. So here's October 25th in Lexington to show what they got at the time. Opener Chief Tapu versus Jim Lancaster. Rick Zarda versus Pez Whatley. I know very little about Rick Zarda and his career. I just know he wore a T-shirt that had Zarda written across it. So
phenomenal.
And I'm not sure if he sold a lot of those. You've got the Great Tio versus Crusher Broomfield. Lanny and George Weingroff were facing the Convertible Blondes, and then Savage versus Garvin for Broomfield's contract.
Okay.
Now, this is around the time frame that we do know Ernie Ladd came in. He came in November, and he worked 3 shows against Crusher Broomfield, George Gray, One Man Gang, etc. At least one of those is on videotape.
You forgot Akeem, the African.
Akeem, yeah, exactly.
He's a job soul, bro.
Yeah, dancing fool. So the match that is on tape is not exactly a 5-star classic. I mean, it's Ernie Ladd and Crusher Broomfield kind of trading, shots to each other's back.
Right.
And Pistol Pez is doing his screaming heel commentary, and he interferes in the match, and Broomfield wins via interference. But, that clearly led to him leaving the territory in a few months and going to Mid-South. So I do think that Ernie was there to scout him at the time, because they
he does show up with it. Right, yeah, they do the angle over there. In fact, he takes Ernie Ladd out with before the knee surgery, I believe, in Mid-South. That's how he debuts.
Yeah. So some of the Apache Lou Martinez leaves in November, making no great mark upon the territory. Garvin is continuing to defend his Southeastern title, which is interesting because that promotion has been dead for about 2 years now, and he's still defending the title.
Hey man, nobody was there to take the belt off of him, so
that's right. Miss Macho Man, not Pez Whatley in women's underclothing. Brenda Britton starts seconding Savage at a lot of the shows, so he's got the female valet going on for him at that time. And then Rick Link is working as a job guy on some of the ICW television programs.
I'm sure he would believe differently, but that's all right. Job guy.
Yeah. And he would go into Memphis a few years later. Was just absolutely terrible. Jimmy Hart said he's the person he least liked managing in the history of his career.
Wow, that's a lot of ground, especially in Memphis. I mean, Jimmy managed everything that moved. Probably managed a couple people off the streets.
Yeah, I insulted Rick's work online once, and he found my comment, and he wasn't very happy with me. But I saw it up close and personal, so I know what I was talking about. Okay, so here is a card from the Louisville Times that reported that ICW drew 818 people to the Sports Center in Frankfurt on November 4th. They paid $3,386 for tickets. The center rental was $619. Isn't that an odd figure?
That's a really weird, yeah.
I don't know if that's a percentage of the gate. So anyway, ICW cleared $2,767 to pay all expenses, including the wrestlers. So the card was Jerry Eagle and Rick Zarda against the Convertible Blondes, Great Tio versus Weingroff, Garvin versus Pez, Ernie Ladd versus Crusher Broomfield, and Leaping Laney versus Savage. So, having Ernie Ladd on the card probably bumped that up, I would think, a little bit from its normal.
Right. Yeah, I wonder how much they had Jay Eagle pay them to work the show. That's what I'm wondering right there.
Yeah. So, the Great Tio's heel run with the TV title ends in November, as he's beaten, of course, by the Miser. So another newspaper article hits the Louisville Times. This time it's just about Rip Rogers. Very, very lengthy piece about Rip. It's just this big puff piece, basically.
Okay.
Rip says, "You can't be married in this business. Too many fringe benefits. You wouldn't believe the fringe benefits." That's my favorite quote from the article. He's shooting right there. It did note the small crowd in Louisville for the Thanksgiving show. Rip said, "We got more people than this in Shelbyville last night for the mud wrestling show."
Wow.
So again, they can't get a foothold in a city where Jarrett's running. Star left the Convertible Blondes. They kind of did this promo. "Oh, we're all friends. He's just going on to pursue his own career goals." His own career goals were leaving the promotion because he was gone very shortly after that.
No more Ricky Starr. That might have been when I saw him pop up in Georgia for a job or two, and then I haven't seen him since.
Yeah. Tio, who no longer the TV title champion, but he gets in a program with Garvin, and he hits him with a lead pipe on TV. And Garvin is so injured that he has to wear a singlet for a short period of time, I guess hiding some sort of back brace or something he's wearing.
Oh, okay.
And Ronnie Garvin in a singlet is the most ridiculous looking thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And Garvin comes out there and says, "I'm not injured. I'm at 100%. And then Lanny Poffo goes on, "I know this man. I know he's hurt. He shouldn't be going in the ring." So thought this was interesting. We get to Christmas night, 1981. They've got two shows. One's in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, so kind of on the western end of the promotion, and one on Johnson City, the eastern side of the promotion. And you will note that there are a couple of wrestlers that are promoted on each show, so I don't know what actually ended up happening. But here's what they've got in Cape Girardeau. Bill Martin versus the Destroyer, who shows up again. Jeff Sword versus Chief Tapu. Lanny and George Weingroff against the Convertible Blondes. Lights out main event, not sanctioned by the ICW. Fans can stay or leave. Wow. Crusher Broomfield versus Bad Pistol Pez Whatley. Fans can stay or leave. We don't know what's going to happen. It's so violent we can't sanction this match.
You shouldn't give the fans the option of leaving, though. I don't know.
Should lock them in.
That's it.
You can't go. Johnson City, you get the Miser versus Rick Zarda. Rick Rogers teaming up with Sir Rickton Link versus Weingroff and Hoot Gibson. Brenda Britton versus Pam Watson in a ladies' mud wrestling match. Crusher Broomfield, who's booked in Cape Girardeau in the main event, versus the Great T.O. and Savage versus Garvin. So both George Weingroff and Broomfield were advertised in Cape Girardeau and Johnson City. I don't think they had a private jet to fly them between the shows.
No, definitely not. I noticed Lanny's on the Cape Girardeau show. Savage and Angelo are working Johnson City. I would have thought they would have tried to split Randy and Angelo to handle business, if you will. So it's kind of interesting there.
Yeah. Well, George Weingroff here covered a lot of that. We'll talk about that a little bit later, too. Okay. The last show that I have records for the year was headlined by The Sheik against Ronnie Garvin. So and this is the time frame that the Sheik comes in the territory for a short bit. So who had the most main events in 1981? Surprisingly, not Randy Savage. Ronnie Garvin is has the 158 that I could find. I'm sure there's many more. Savage had 133. Leaping Landy 90. Pez 81. Bob Orton 65. He's gone. Crusher Broomfield 64. He's about to leave. Weingroff 49. Bob Roop 37. He's gone. Then you get down to Rip Rogers, Great T.O., just the rest of the guys on the card. They were, this is probably the time they're running the full gamut of the ICW territory. They're regularly in West Virginia. Beckley's the main town, but they're running a lot of West Virginia towns. Cape Girardeau, of course, Knoxville. They're running the Arkansas towns. They're running a number of towns in Illinois. They also ran a town in Virginia at least once, Tazewell, Virginia. Okay. So huge geographic area. Rip Rogers was reminiscing about Prestonburg, Kentucky. He said Prestonburg always drew good crowds, probably could get folks from both Pikeville and Painesville in the mix. I recall the gym being about 70% full, so a good estimate would be 1,000 to 1,200 people depending on the card. Garden Savage was always a push bout in that town. So he's estimating that Prestonburg, Kentucky is drawing more than Louisville is. And this is a town, this population in 1980 was 4,000 people. So they're doing much better at little spot shows than they can do in major cities.
Well, there's nothing to do in Prestonburg, maybe, right? So you come down
exactly.
To the matches. Yeah, that's always, it works out well. I think that's why they succeeded so well in the Eastern Kentucky. Nobody was really running there, but also not a whole lot to do there in those coal mining towns and places like that. So.
Yeah, it was before the opioid crisis, so,
Yeah, yikes, yeah.
So here were the title holders at the end of 1981. Savage had the world title. Lanny and Weingroff were tag team champions. The Miser's the TV champ. Ronnie Garvin's the Southeast. So they have a lot of belts they can defend, that's for sure.
And look at those champions. I still have to laugh at the word world. Champion is Randy Savage. Tag team champions, Lanny, Poffo, Weingroff. TV champion, the Miser, Angelo, Poffo. And Ronnie Garvin brought the belt with him, so naturally he's the Southeastern champ. So it's all in the family, man.
It is all in the family. So we're gonna end this particular podcast talking about the business operations.
Oh, that sounds fun.
And who was involved in doing what.
All right.
And I have to give James Romero a lot of credit. James does wrestling shoot interviews. He's done regular interviews with Dutch Mantell on podcast and Don Morocco and a variety of other people. He got Lanny Poffo to talk more about ICW than I've ever heard anyone do, because
Probably paid Lanny the most then.
He may have, but Lanny, whenever I've seen him asked about ICW, who would always kind of deflect and move on.
Right.
And when I met him in person, I tried to mention ICW, and he didn't want to talk about it. So James got a lot of information about him. He said, it was not my father's territory. It was 1/3 mine, 1/3 Randy, and 1/3 my father's. So he's ignoring the fact that all these other people had business interests. I was in Portland, Oregon, and I was friends with Roddy Piper. He says, Lanny, I got an idea for you. Can you work Hill? I said, yes. And he said, I'm going to, with your permission, I'm going to call Mike LaBelle in Los Angeles because I think you would be great against the Guerreros. And I was a flyer and they were flyers. They were better than me, but being a villain, that's basically what's supposed to be. I was told to call Mike LaBelle, and we talked for an hour, and I told him that I spoke Spanish, which is not 100% true, but I could get heat in an interview in Spanish by insulting the people. He told me, Lanny, I'll be very honest with you. Roddy Piper is like a son to me, and if he says you got what it takes, then by God, we're going to give you every opportunity to get over. If a movie comes along, we're going to get you in the movie. He made 3 movies when he was here, referring to Roddy, and we're going to do the same for you, because if you're a friend of Roddy's, you're a friend of mine. I was very excited about it. Then 2 weeks later, I get a call from my father saying, we're going to the ICW. We're moving to Lexington, Kentucky. And I said, oh no, I want to go to Los Angeles. Reluctantly, I had to call Mike LaBelle and tell him I wasn't coming in because I had to do business of my father and my brother. He was so nice about it, it made me feel even worse. Then I told Roddy Piper, and he was so nice about it, it made me feel worse. It's one of the heartbreaks of my life that I had to take this enormous successful break that Roddy Piper gave me and not be able to utilize it. I looked at ICW as being punished for something that I've never done. So that's a really frank and interesting.
And that probably explains a lot why Lanny doesn't want to talk about it, because I don't know that he's going to have a lot of nice things to say. And then, he loved his brother, he loved his family. So it's if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all kind of deal. And it really covers. I didn't realize that, going into my stories with Bob Roop, that how Lanny felt necessarily, and we'll get into that here in just a second, but about ICW in general. But Bob had always said Lanny was kind of like the guy over here in the corner. Like, he didn't get involved in shit. And so. Yeah.
I mean, I think Lanny's kind of romanticizing the Los Angeles promotion a little bit.
Sure.
Because it was very much down during that time. But it also would have been his, first kind of big break
right.
by himself to be a top guy in a territory. So that experience could have been invaluable for him if it had worked out. So he went on to say, I tried to make the best of it. I was in charge of the picture table and the gimmicks. For 1,000 pictures, the cost came to 6 cents a picture. That means you sell it for $1, you get 94 cents profit. We made a fortune. I dedicated myself to making this picture business profitable and good for the fans. I had a tag team partner, George Widegroff. He came up with an idea. If you got people who are not selling well, you put them in the grab bag. On people that leave the territory, you put them in the grab bag. You also include maybe one picture of someone who's still there, or a Macho Man for selling one of my pictures. For $1, you get a grab bag of maybe 10 pictures that weren't selling anyway. We made a fortune on the picture table, and I felt pretty good about it. Then he goes on to say, I took all the pictures and I wrote all the articles on the program. I'm not sure he did that the whole time because Crybaby Edwards was there. I tried not to think about the big break I lost in Los Angeles and just think about how to help the family and help myself and be successful in business. It was not a happy time for me, but I made the best of it. I had nothing to do with the booking. That was being fought over by the creative minds, namely Macho Man Randy Savage. He was great at making a silk purse out of a sow's ear, making chicken soup out of chicken shit. He was just an incredibly sharp mind in the business. When business was great, we were doing 2 shows a night. Pikeville, Kentucky ran weekly. Wednesday, still in East Tennessee, let's say Combs, Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky was very lucrative for us. We would be in Tennessee, Johnson City. Then we would be in Southern Illinois, very big, WSIL Channel 3, which was in Carterville, Illinois, Cape Paducah, Kentucky, Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and every spot show between that and there. We were doing excellent business, and of course the problem with running an outlaw promotion, because we are stuck with the talent we have, we don't get as much people in and out as other territories. The NWA, people come in for 3 weeks and leave, and there's always fresh entertainment. But Randy was able to keep it going and keep it fresh. It's a handicap to be an outlaw group. You don't get Andre the Giant, that's for sure. So he kind of goes back to the beginning here. He says, at that time, Ronnie Garvin, Bob Roop, and Bob Orton Jr. were going opposition to the Fullers in Knoxville. We were trading talent between ourselves. When they stopped running, we swallowed them up and employed them. That's some excellent talent right there. They brought a lot of fresh life into the ICW. Nothing lasts forever. Finally, they left and did very well on his own. And Rip Rogers was talking about, being a part owner and the dividends that they would get.
Okay.
I remember a really good month. I made about an extra $6,000 in the dividend. That's when Crusher Broomfield was there. We struggled. We started from scratch, and then we started getting bigger and bigger. Then guys started dropping off. Garvin left, Pez left, I left. At the end, they pretty much had to close the door. So when he's saying he's got that $6,000 dividend, and when Crusher Broomfield was there, that makes me think that's why 1981 was probably their most profitable year. Not $6,000 today in today's money, that would be 18. I mean, that's a huge amount of money.
Well, I'm wondering why when Bob left the territory in the middle of 81, he only got $50-some $100 for his entire 10%. And here Rip got $6,000 in 1 month. Oh.
Yeah, that may be wrestler's memory on how big that check was. But. Rogers, guys had certain duties. Lanny had to make sure the belts were in, like the special suitcase for the belt bags, to make sure nobody stole them at all the spot shows. So Lanny's running around collecting all the belts so nobody gets to walk away from one. George Weingroff was always settling up with the promoters because he was a babyface and the last one to leave. So setting up with the local sponsors.
Right.
I was just learning. I would just shut up and did what I was told. Randy would be driving and talking to me. I'm writing down everything for the show. Rip Rogers on Beckley. I remember personally going to the television station WOAY in Oak Hill, West Virginia, and getting the town for ICW. We ran Beckley off that. Beckley was the best town we had. We would run it the first Thursday of each month. So in addition to all these places where they're putting the tape in, that they're running shows, Rip goes on to say, we had a lot of stations that paid us, like San Francisco paid us, Mobile, Alabama paid us. There were 2 in North or South Dakota. There was 1 in Milwaukee. They would buy the ICW tape and they would hustle the thing to get their commercials, and they would make their money back on commercials. So I think the number is 14 TV markets they had at one point, which, for such a tiny promotion,
right.
They were doing pretty well. Savage did all the TV editing, which is kind of funny to imagine. That would Randy Savage.
Right there. Camera number 2. We only have 2 cameras.
Yeah. Author John Finkel, who wrote the Savage book that's available. Aside from the wrestlers themselves, ICW included 2 travel vans that were purchased for $16,000 and 1 ring truck to transport the mat, ropes, and posts that cost $30,000. Then there were several $1,000s of television and sound equipment, studio time, costumes, and a variety of other odds and ends needed to produce 3 to 5 wrestling shows a week. The Rip said Angelo was the key to everything. He had the resource to make it happen. He was willing to do it. Izzy Slapowitz talked about the booking when he was there. A couple of days a week in a smoke-filled room in one of the boys' apartments would be the main booking team, Savage and Orton and Garvin and a bunch of the other boys. We'd be sitting there. We'd sit there for hours. We'd talk about crazy shit we could do that we could make a good angle. Once we came up with something the bookers liked, we would just run with it.
Well, that would explain the crazy booking here in the ICW. You have 10 wrestlers high on God knows what, pitching ideas. I mean, no wonder.
Cornette. I don't know who was booking all those years, but Eddie Graham didn't have anything to worry about. I'm kind of more in the Cornette camp than some of the other camps that talk about how great the booking was. Tim Tyler. Randy always had a very small notebook for him, or with him, and had months in advance what was going to happen. He had it all choreographed so well. He should be a soap opera writer. His storylines would go months in advance. And then Tyler's talking about the TV tapings. They would bring people in sometimes to be in the audience. They would tell them to yell something at a certain time. Randy would tell the director to focus on a certain person's face at a certain time.
Wow. All right.
So
Randy didn't just script his matches. He scripted the fans. Unbelievable. Dig it.
And kind of the last piece of the puzzle we'll talk about in terms of the business operations was Crybaby Edwards. I think his real name was George Hill. He worked publicity for the promotion from October 1980 to June of 1982. He had worked as a heel manager for Phil Golden's All-Star Wrestling, and he'd worked at various times for Henry Rogers in Malden, Missouri. So he kind of had this history.
Holy
of working
shit!
with these
The
very small outlaw
trifecta
promotions.
here, yeah. Phil Golden, Henry Rogers in Malden, and Dale Mann. Unbelievable! All right, he did hit the trifecta.
He did. What a life! What a life! So Rip Rogers wrote, Crybaby was with ICW for a while. He worked box office, ref, picture table, did ads for the papers, you name it, was overqualified for everything. Bill Martin, I was only there less than a year and a half, but I thought Crybaby kept everything going. He was always busy, a very nice human being. Eric Westland, as Rip Rogers said, Crybaby was the glue that held ICW together for the time he was there. He worked there basically from October 1980 until June 1982 as a publicity director. Made many a phone call to local newspapers to get coverage of ICW, as it was a requirement for nonprofits to get a free write-up in the newspaper if the show was sponsored by a nonprofit. So I thought that was very interesting. That's something I'd never heard before, that the local newspaper was required by law to advertise a nonprofit event. So if your sponsor was, quote, a nonprofit, you were automatically going to get free publicity.
Yeah.
He did all the ICW programs when he was there, took pictures at shows and tapings. He wanted to be a wrestler manager so bad, but didn't have the look or verbal skills. He went on to say that sadly that Crybaby Edwards took his own life probably around 2010-ish. So that's unfortunate. But that gives you just a little bit of a taste of, all these guys having all these different responsibilities in the promotion and what a mom and pop operation it was.
Yeah, to the umpteenth degree, it would appear. So many guys. It seems like I don't want to call it fly by night because it lasted for several years, but it was just what can we get out of this guy and that guy? And I don't know that Angelo was going around pitching this stuff. It was just guys kind of volunteering their time and whatever, and it just kind of helped keep ICW afloat for all these years here during this time period. But they luck into some talent who just happened to screw around with Fuller, and now they're not doing a big go of it up there in Knoxville. So all of a sudden they get Roop and Orton and Garvin. I mean, that's some big ass names, quality talent that have main evented in various territories and whatnot. So everything's really coming along. And then poof, 1981. It seems like it's the peak financially and in the ring. You got the guys, well, of course, Randy Savage, but you got those guys, like I said, from Knoxville. But then Crusher Broomfield, you luck into a big monster-looking guy. It really was the peak, as far as the talent pool went, too.
Yes. And we'll see in 1982 when things start to really fall off. And then 1983, you just kind of go off a cliff. It kind of, I really don't know how they survived 1983. But I think that's an interesting look at how it was a family business. Everybody in the family was actively involved in the business. And then a lot of these, quote, shareholders, they had all these extra jobs. And so they weren't getting paid much on a weekly basis, but they were hoping that there would be some pay at the end of the rainbow. So I don't know how that worked out for everyone, but
I could guess, but I'll just leave it out there for everyone else to use your own imagination and kind of figure it out. But no, it's a fascinating story. And, as they lose all of these talents to the Mid-South, and of course, Izzy and the Devils duo are gone. Pez is still there for the time being, but Broomfield's gone in the very early part of 1982. So I'm very curious to see where we go next. I kind of have an idea of where we go next. It's going to be
and it's interesting is 1981 they did not try Memphis again. 1982 they go back into Memphis, so they're trying to test that water again. Yeah.
Let's test the water after we lose all the talent. Makes sense. Okay. Very good. Very good.
Some interesting things. Some interesting things are going to happen with the Sheik. Some interesting things are going to happen with the business in 1982. So yes, another fun chapter to look forward to.
Oh, well, I got to tell you, not a better edition of Regional Wrestling to do heading into the holidays this week. Merry Christmas to all and happy holidays and things of that. I want to wish everybody out there. But Steve, I want to thank you so much, man, for bringing me back, to the good old ICW. It's been a couple months, it feels like. And so It was due, baby, and I'm so happy we got it here just in time. Our Christmas gift, our holiday present to you all.
There you go. So thanks for having me back again. I love talking ICW wrestling.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Steve. And guys, right around the corner, it's going to be ICW 1982. You don't want to miss it. But for now, we wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Kwanzaa, and whatever the hell else I forgot there. But the Hanukkah. How could I forget Hanukkah? I mean, we were talking about Izzy Slapowitz, for goodness sake. But thanks again, Steve, man. We'll be back soon, guys. Thanks, Steve.
Bye.